Hi, I'd like to take a moment to look at Joe Beam's article entitled, What is Happening to the Churches of Christ? Therein, he looks not only at what's happening to the Churches of Christ, but he also looks forward to maybe what the future of the Churches of Christ will be. This is Joe's graphic. It looks at the left and right wings of the Churches of Christ and puts things on a continuum between inclusive and exclusive. And he sees within that these 6 different categories of Church of Christ members, from exasperated to open, to cautious, to searching, to satisfied, and zealots. And he sees that there are zealot churches, traditional churches, innovative churches, and exasperated churches. It seems as if there are other things going on here, and I wanted to look at those a little bit in a visual way. So instead of just looking at the inclusive and exclusive lines, I think it's important to also look at change versus tradition. And then with this matrix, we can see the different aspects of what's going on with the various components and groups within the Churches of Christ. In the lower quadrant here are what Joe calls the zealots, those who are think that anybody outside of the Churches of Christ are lost. The old paths have to be defended. Anyone who associates with the wrong people, they're also wrong. Or if you even stand on the same stage or go to the same conferences with the wrong people. And they interpret the Bible by what's often called command, example, and necessary inference, and don't feel that there needs to be any new way of looking at interpreting the Bible. A big part of the zealot worldview is attacking those who disagree with them, actively seeking out and identifying those that they believe to be wrong. The next group are those that Joe calls the satisfied. The satisfied, they're happy. They are content. Things were great in the 1950s, and they continue to be great. They don't think there needs to be any change in order to experience life and growth. A big motivation for the satisfieds is trying to keep the peace, and one of the groups that they are most interested in keeping the peace with are the zealots. Next would be the searchers. They still are very exclusive and like the tradition, but they're willing to change. Change is helpful, but they're not willing to change if it gives up the identity of being in the Churches of Christ. They want spirituality and vibrancy and excitement and connection from their hearts and their minds and their souls, but they won't give up relationship and tradition to get those things. The next group, Joe calls the cautious. They are willing to take even another step towards change, even another step towards being more inclusive, for the sake of vibrancy, for the sake of having an exciting faith. They still don't want to hurt people, but they are willing to step into some more innovative practices in their faith. Next would be the opens. They are fine with non-traditional actions, looking at innovative ways to do church, to worship. They are okay with looking at doctrine and re-examining it in light of new scholarship, but they want to stay in the Church of Christ fellowship. They see value in what's going on in the Churches of Christ. They think change is necessary for growth. They want to do new things to draw in new people, and because of that, they're often labeled as change agents, especially by the satisfied and the zealots. And finally, there's the exasperateds. They are almost done. They have one foot out the door, often because they feel hurt by people in the traditional Church of Christ, the satisfieds and the zealots, and they have almost no hope for change, no hope that the Churches of Christ can do something better in the future. I chose to look at this using worship as a way to give us some insight into what's going on. The zealots have the standard marquee sign, the Church of Christ meets here, with the standard 3 meetings a week. That is very traditional, hasn't changed in 50 years. The satisfieds use the the Sacred Selections, that songbook from the 1950s. The the Searchers, however, use the songs of the church from the 1970s. They're willing to look at new things, but they still like the tradition. The Cautious are willing to go even further. The songbook is from the 90s, but they still probably will have shape notes and will want to maintain that tradition and connection. The Opens, they're willing to get rid of songbooks altogether, or to use songbooks in addition to projecting the lyrics, and they may even get away from notes completely and just project lyrics. And the Exasperateds, they're willing to, in essence, thumb their nose at the a cappella tradition and start bringing in instruments, partly because they feel that it is a way to connect more with our culture and our world, and partly because they've been hurt by people who've told them that they can't. So within these groups, there are different major church traditions. In the center, we have both the traditional and the innovative churches. The traditional churches have those who are satisfied and those who are searching. The innovative churches have those who are open and those who are cautious. But there's overlap in between. There's a lot of muddy middle going on here, where you could have some of all of these people in almost any church. On the edges, we have the Zealots and the Exasperateds. There might be some Zealots in a traditional church, and there might be some Satisfieds in a Zealot church. You're not going to find a Zealot in an innovative church, and you're not going to find an Exasperated in a Zealot church, probably not in a traditional church. Joe is, in his article, proposing that he's seeing a split happening. If things don't change, there is a split coming, is his theory. And he sees that when the split happens, right away, the innovative churches will become one group, the Exasperated churches will become another group, and the traditional and Zealot churches will become a third group. Most of the Opens and Satisfieds and Searchers will migrate to the traditional churches out of fear, out of wanting to maintain a connection with the tradition. The innovative churches will have the Opens, and the Exasperated churches will just have the Exasperateds. But in 12 to 36 months, Joe thinks that the Exasperateds will leave altogether, have no connection to our fellowship. The innovative churches will grow, and the traditional Zealot churches will shrink. What do you think? Does that make sense to you? Do you agree? Do you disagree? What do you think needs to change to make this future not happen?